So this is something interesting. So Kyle Kulinski had made, I think, like 2 videos on Ben Shapiro back in 2013. And especially at the time and now, of course, I mean, Ben Shapiro has this sort of cult-like following. And I'll leave the link to the video in the description if you want to go and leave a like on the video or whatever. But, it's extremely weird because anytime you do a video on Ben Shapiro specifically, and now you can group other people in there too, Jordan Peterson being the main one, from time to time Dave Rubin, you'll have the odds of attracting these cult-like fanatics who are people who, are just essentially these cult followers of these people who are these sycophants, and they sycophantically follow and try to, when they see these videos, they get super triggered and dislike it. And so, if you do a video on some Fox News host, let's say Laura Ingraham or whoever, you're not going to get, as many dislikes as you will if you do one on Ben Shapiro. And that's because they have these extremely sycophantic fans who are, more often than not dumb. And so Kyle did one of these videos, and it's really interesting. And I'm going to show you guys this video. By the way, this is back when Kyle had the old setup where he had 3 microphones, and the audio is still like really bad. But this is a pretty funny video. So and this was a clip that I think was covered by other progressive hosts as well at the time. But basically, in this clip, Ben Shapiro's on, I believe, Pat Robertson's Looney Show. And basically, he claims that, he was really envious of Obama because he was such a good candidate and he couldn't figure out a way to beat him. And so he was trying to say that, Mitt Romney painted him as a bad president but a good guy, and basically Obama did the opposite. He posed him as a bad guy, and that, you're going to pick good guy, bad president over bad guy. And that's what he's trying to say. And that, Republicans need to stop talking about policy positions and stoop to their level. And it's just ridiculous. So check out this video.
Look at the 2012 election. This is why Republicans lost. The reason they lost is because both candidates really succeeded at defining their opposition. Mitt Romney defined Barack Obama as a nice guy, good father, good family man, believed in the Constitution, believed in the Declaration of Independence, just not very good at being president. And the polls reflected that. Most Americans didn't think that Obama was a great president. Barack Obama painted Mitt Romney as the worst guy since Stalin. He was somebody who liked to chain dogs to the top of cars. He had binders full of women because he hated them. He specifically fired employees so that later their wives would die of cancer. And it has the predictable effect. Most Americans, given a choice between good guy, bad president and horrible human being, will choose good guy, bad president.
What are the Republicans going to do to overcome that gap? They seem unable to formulate an appropriate response.
I think they have to stop arguing policy. You can't argue policy with people who are uncivil. Civilians continue conventions. Once you step out of uniform, it no longer applies. Republicans need to do, as President Obama suggested, they need to punch back twice as hard.
Wow, man. Wow. All right, so from the top, there's so much to debunk there. It would take me a week if I really wanted to go word for word. But let's try to get it in a couple minutes here. So first he says, Romney painted Obama as a good guy. Who follows politics actually thinks that that's true? Who thinks that's an accurate statement, who actually follows politics? Nobody. He attacked him for everything. He's un-American. He's a redistributionist. Remember Benghazi, the whole Benghazi situation. Mitt Romney, most people forgot about this. Mitt Romney called a press conference after Americans were killed at Benghazi the next day before Barack Obama got to speak. So he tried to politicize the attack directly after it happened. That guy's painting Barack Obama as a nice guy, a good man? No, he attacked him for everything under the sun. They made stuff up when they attacked him. I mean, the Jeep ad, I think that got Lie of the Year from PolitiFact. It was just pulled out of thin air. It was pants on fire lie. They said, Obama wants to send all the American jobs for Jeep to China or something. No, that's incorrect. That guy's treating Barack Obama nicely? He's treating him like he's a good guy? What planet are you on, dude? So then he goes on to talk about how Obama, he painted Mitt Romney as out of touch and Richie Rich and the worst guy since Stalin. Yeah, but why was Obama able to do that successfully? Because Mitt Romney was incredibly out of touch, and he was Richie Rich. Now, Obama didn't go as far as to try to paint him like he's Stalin or Hitler or something like that, but he did paint him as like Thurston Howell III. Why? Because he was like Thurston Howell III. Dude, he has a car elevator. The dude has a car elevator. Come on, I'm not having this conversation. And he said that thing in front of blue-collar workers. Oh, yeah, my wife drives a couple of Cadillacs. Yes, I have so much money. He would have been the richest president in American history. He was responsible for leveraged buyouts. Remember when his whole Wall Street passed? He was responsible for leveraged buyouts and shipping people's jobs overseas. Even subsidiaries of companies that he had owned about 50% of the stock in during the election was shipping jobs overseas. Sensata Technologies. I mean, how can you let that happen? The workers were begging Romney too. You're running for president. Here, use us as a political stepping stone. Say you're going to save our jobs. Help us out. Nope, he didn't do it. That's why Obama was able to paint him as out of touch and a dick, because he was out of touch and a dick. He painted himself that way. And then my favorite part of it is when he says, Republicans need to stop arguing policy and nuance, and they need to start getting tough. Republicans haven't argued policy in decades. The answer to everything is cut taxes for the rich, deregulate, and start more wars. That's the only thing I hear from them, ever. This is, I mean, the most anti-empirical, dogmatic, faith-based beliefs that are coming out of his mouth. And everything he's saying just isn't the case in the real world. And, I mean, just my last point on this. He really is trying to say Republicans are civil and they need to stop being civil. But thinking Republicans are civil, I mean, remember the attacks? He's a Muslim, he's a socialist, he's a Kenyan, he's a Maoist, he's not a real American. Death panels, death panels, death panels, they want to kill you. This isn't healthcare reform, they want to kill your grandmother. There's been more filibusters under this Congress than any Congress ever. Yeah, man, those Republicans are real civil. And those Democrats, they're the bullies. God, you don't know anything.
So yeah, of course, that is utterly, utterly ridiculous and one of the dumbest things that I've ever seen. And if you go in the comments section, it's a bunch of, loony Shapiro fans saying, and it's really hilarious, by the way, because there are a bunch of people saying, have Ben Shapiro on your show or debate Ben Shapiro, because there's this, idea that basically Ben Shapiro is this crazy good debater and that's what makes him right on everything. What's really crazy is you can tell the shift between what existed back then and what exists now. So you're not really going to see a video with a like to dislike ratio like that now as much. You'll still see it from time to time when it comes to a Ben Shapiro video, although it's not very likely. Not as likely, I should say. It depends on who's making it, but Kyle, that's obviously not going to happen. But what's really funny that shifted is there are people saying debate Ben Shapiro, and knowing now what we know now, back in 2018, in October of 2018, what did Kyle do? He offered to debate Ben Shapiro. And what did Ben Shapiro say? He said he's not doing any debates this year. So it just imagine, and I said this at the time, I've made multiple videos about this saying, hey guys, I don't know how much I can stress this, but I'm really trying to stress this really, really hard to let you know, hey, look, if the roles were flipped here, the right wing would be jabbering and putting this on repeat for decades upon forever, ad nauseum. I tried as hard as I could to, accentuate and sort of emphasize that to you guys. But think about how the roles have flipped now, because Ben Shapiro, not only, the supposed king debater, not only declined to debate with Kyle Kulinski, he didn't do any of them at Politicon, which is supposed to be the homo-political debates. He didn't do a single one. He just did a Q&A with random people, and he had the gall in that Q&A that he did to say, in response to someone asking him about why do you only debate college kids, he was like, well, it's the only people that debate me. Doofus, Kyle just offered to debate you, and you didn't accept. You declined. Just imagine the roles were flipped for 1 second, and they are flipped now, which is really, really crazy. So let's get to what Ben Shapiro said in that video. And, Kyle pretty much already debunked it, but I mean, come on, bro. Really? Republicans talking about policy positions? You've got to be kidding me. Either if they try to even get close to that, they're going to embarrass them. We've all seen the Mitt Romney-Obama debate highlights. Remember when Mitt Romney was like, oh, the Navy needs more ships, and then Obama's like, the Navy, we use less ships the same way we don't use, horses and bayonets. And it was just embarrassing after embarrassment. And the worst part, I think the biggest example of this is remember, Mitt Romney ran on repeal and replace Obamacare. The Republicans had ran on that for 6 years after it was passed. So they ran on that for like 6 years, and when it came time to repeal it, they didn't have anything to replace it with. So it tells you they don't even have policy positions to actually, put in place, because, okay, now you have the House. Okay, now you have the Senate. Now you have the presidency. You have control. You have a unified government. You have all branches of government there. And so it's like, bro, really? And you don't even have the what you want to put in place after you repeal it. And so they were just, trying to make what ended up being, this sort of Obamacare light, if you will. Obviously, it wasn't as good, but it was, and there were Republicans who were getting pissed off at that, whether it be Stephen, douchebag Crowder, or Tammy Lahren or Sarah Palin or whatever, saying that they're rhinos, which means Republican in name only, because, it's not a clean-cut repeal, which would, we don't accept anything but throwing all of them off of their health insurance, right? Because that's the Christian thing to do. But dude, are you kidding me? Stop it with that nonsense. And then, could you imagine making the assertion that any Republican opponent of Barack Obama put him, didn't do these low, disgusting attacks against him? I mean, dude, he was called a birther by massive amounts of Republicans. There was birthers. Donald Trump, who's president now, remember, he was a birther. And as he explained there, remember, guys, and there's another debate clip there where, Romney tried framing Obama as waiting like days upon days to denounce the Benghazi attack, when then, they asked the moderator for a fact check, and then Mitt Romney's embarrassed because he turned out to be completely wrong, as always. But you kidding me, dude? And as he explained there, Mitt Romney, he jumped before Obama could speak to be like, to politicize the event and to try to take everything away from it and pit it against Obama, which I guess that wasn't even that didn't even end up being a good move for him in terms of the, politics in the election and how that whole thing panned out. But when you do something like that, you're not talking about policy positions. What you're talking about is Barack Hussein Obama is a not an un-American, treasonous, person, and we need to vote him out of office because I'm the real American. And that is as far away from policy as you get. It's a disgusting, low-life attack that you put on somebody, and he did it to the highest order, the highest degree, where you're talking about jumping ahead of him to try to talk before him to get the news on you and all that kind of stuff. And they would call Obama, and this is really funny now, because they used to call Obama a socialist when he's barely left of center. Like, Barack Obama, I mean, he ended up dropping the public option. He wasn't even a big supporter of the public option when it really came down to it. He claimed to support, I think in 2003, he said he supported it, and then when when it came time to the Obamacare time, he didn't really end up fighting for public option, ended up dropping it, prematurely. So this guy, how the hell do you, and Ben Shapiro was one of them. I went through some tweets of his where he was calling him a Marxist. Barack Obama is barely left of center. How on God's green earth could you call him a socialist? And so now we have Bernie Sanders and AOC, who are still social democrats, and they're now calling them socialists, and you see the divide between, Obama and AOC and Bernie Sanders. Like, bro, what are you guys doing? You're not doing policy positions. You don't care about any of that. And all you really have is these stupid platitudes in place, and that's all you really do. And most of it ends up being, dumb gunk that you just spit out your mouth. That's a heap of garbage. But trust me, guys, that is literally the dumbest political analysis I've ever seen in my entire life. And and as I already explained this earlier, but Ben Shapiro was really flustered. He was really going through some bad situation at the time because, Obama was a really good politician. And what I don't really get is why he hated Obama so much anyways, because Barack Obama wasn't even really left-wing. If you think about Barack Obama, I mean, what did he do? He got Obamacare through. That's a mandate for private health insurance. How could you hate that much as a Republican? In fact, it was a Heritage Foundation plan in the first place. how are you going to hate, how many, record numbers of private sector jobs grew, stock market grew, etc., etc. It's just this weird, like, religious, almost like cultish hatred for Obama, because it's like Obama was no AOC. In fact, Bernie Sanders was flirting with the idea of primarying Obama in 2012 because he wasn't progressive enough. So Obama was no AOC or Bernie Sanders, and he hated him with every single fiber of his being, and he seemed really flustered because they couldn't beat Obama because he was such a good politician. He was a shitty president for the most part, but, obviously he's better than what we have now, but that's not saying much. But he was a really good politician, and so he was really like, God damn, how do we beat him? But anyways, that is the power of the Ben Shapiro cult. You could give literally the dumbest analysis ever, and all of the comment section will be filled with not trying to actually debunk, what they're saying, but rather instead, say, debate Ben Shapiro.